In March 1993, in an area called Ayot in modern-day South Sudan, which used to be one country, this picture was taken. A picture named the Vulture and the little girl. The picture you're seeing is a little kid laid down on the ground so hungry that they're about to pass out. And in the back there is a vulture waiting for this kid to die so he can start eating. A photographer by the name of Kevin Carter from South Africa is the person that took this photo. An insane picture that really moved a lot of people around the world. But a lot of people in the world don't really know the story behind this photo. Even though the name of the picture is the vulture and the little girl, this kid is actually not a girl, but a boy. A boy named Kang Nyong. Kang and his family were fleeing the civil war that was going on in Sudan, and this was the location they were passing by from. You might be familiar with the Sudan Civil War. This is when the South Sudanese start fighting the Sudan's government. But why did this civil war take place anyway? The Southerners were Christian, and the Northerners who had the power were Muslim, and they lived together with relatively low problems. Until we get to the 1980s, when the company Chevron struck oil in Sudan. Since the government was mainly Muslim, and the area that oil was struck was Christian, they used Sharia's law, so they didn't really count the Christian people as Sudanese and took advantage of their land. And this is when the civil war between the Northerners and the Southerners began. But on the sidelines, the oil is all safe and sound and it's being taken. In this war, just like any other war, the people that didn't know what is going on, normal people that were just living their life, had the worst experience out of all of them, and they were the ones most affected. People couldn't even fill up their stomach, and this began a famine. After this took place, the United Nations decided to land here to help the people out, so they start bringing food for the people of Sudan. And it was funny because this war wouldn't happen if oil wasn't found, because all the problems began when the oil was found. Same with the workers of the United Nations, they brought a lot of reporters and photographers to witness what is happening and how the UN is helping them out. One of those photographers was this guy, Kevin Carter. Just like we said, the reason the UN brought these reporters and photographers was just to show the world what is happening in Sudan and get a taste of the civil war. Kevin Carter was actually a well-known photographer at this point because he was in South Africa during apartheid, and he took a lot of powerful photos for the world to show what is happening in South Africa, and that is why he was well known. It seems like Kevin Carter wasn't a fan of doing what the United Nations told him to do, because he went on his own way to take more powerful photos rather than just reporting what is happening on the site. So he wants to go out of the way to realize what is happening in the real place. Since Kevin Carter came here with the United Nations, anywhere he went, a Sudanese military man had to escort him to keep him safe because it was during a civil war. Do you see this photo? The UN helicopter has landed with food, and the people of Sudan are running to it to get some food for themselves. After this happened, Kevin Carter realizes that the guard aren't paying attention to him, so he slowly fades out of the picture and leaves. After a few minutes of walking away, he hears a noise of a child struggling. He turns around and sees a child struggling on the ground to move, and in the sky there are vultures flying around. Kevin Carter realizes that this child was going towards the helicopter to get some food. When Carter sees this child, he realizes that the vulture has landed behind him. Then he takes this iconic photo. Kevin Carter takes this photo, but it puts a huge effect on him. He goes under a tree nearby and just starts crying, and then he gets up and leaves. He sends this photo to the New York Times and it gets posted and gets put on the front cover, and most of the people realize what is happening in Sudan. After a few months of this picture being posted, they gave him the Pulitzer Award, which is a very important award for photographers, and only one is given out a year. In the New York Times article, it has written that this boy's name is Kyung Yang, and he eventually gets himself to the helicopter and gets the food he needs. This is an actual true statement. We don't know if someone helped this child or he got to it himself. We couldn't ask the Vulture either. If you pay attention to the little boy in the picture, you see a white strap around his hand. And that means the United Nations has checked out this little boy and gave him the strap for malnourishment. So he had been checked out by the United Nations before. When the UN puts the strap on a child, they're supposed to take care of them and make sure they're not malnourished anymore, not let them out into the field so they can just go anywhere they want. But it seems like they had released this child into the wilderness. Kyung Yang lived until he was 14 years old, and he eventually passed away because of malaria. When this photo was posted, instead of blaming the United Nations or talking about them, they started talking about the photographer Kevin Carter, and they heavily criticized him. Like, why did you take this picture? Why didn't you help the young child get some food? A lot of people said, in this photo you could see two vultures. One is in the frame, and one is behind the camera lens taking advantage of this situation. The reason Kevin didn't touch this little boy was because this was what the United Nations had told them. They were told not to touch anybody, not to get close to any animals, because there are a lot of diseases here and you could get it, so don't take any risks. So Kevin said he didn't want to touch the child because he didn't want to die. Eventually, the public really took a toll on Kevin Carter's life, and he was heavily depressed. And because of all these thoughts and writings, he was heavily depressed. They put so much pressure on him that he didn't even want to leave his home anymore. And eventually, about 1 year after taking this iconic photo, in his home in South Africa, he takes his own life. And this is in a way where Kevin Carter's photo was the first photo that actually moved people around the world and showed them what is happening in Sudan, and it caused the chain reaction of sending help there. The Sudan Civil War lasts until 2005, but no other photo comes out of this war that was more iconic than this. It is very easy to sit in the comfort of your own home and make comments about someone in this situation taking a photo. You can't expect a photographer in a terrifying place to make the correct decision every time. Like, this photo is the most famous photo during the Vietnam War. A Vietnamese girl by the name of Kim Phuoc is running away from a napalm strike that was dropped by the US. The person that took this photo was a Vietnamese man by the name of Nick Ut. This is Nick Ut now, but who's that lady next to him? This lady is the same little girl you see in this picture. Either way, talking about a situation like this is not easy. You can't put yourself in their shoes and imagine you will make the correct decision every time. A person can criticize someone if they've walked a mile in that person's shoe before. Or in simple terms, put your mind in that situation and see what you would do.